All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. This is Pastor Joe, Pastor Vinny from Crossroads Community Church in Framingham, Massachusetts. And so we're continuing with our weekly discussion that we've been having. And we just talk about different topics, things that either maybe questions that people ask or some that I've had. I've kind of wanted to pick Pastor Vinny's brain about. And so that's what we have today. I've mentioned before in one of my sermons that relationships are one of the greatest sources of blessings in our life, but also a great a source of heartache and pain in our lives. And I literally, I was just sitting on my couch one day, and the thought popped into my mind: why are relationships so hard? Why are relationships so hard? And so I said, I'm thinking I'm just going to ask Pastor Vinny about that and see what he has to say. And so really that's what this discussion is about. So Pastor Vinny, as a counselor, what I'm sure, people have probably come and asked you about why, same question: why are relationships so hard, or why am I struggling in my marriage, or why am I struggling to get along with my kids or a coworker, whatever. So if someone were in front of you and they said, why are relationships so difficult, what would your response be to them?
Yeah. Well, it would be, we live in a fallen world, and part of that
Hmm.
fallen world is that we have an enemy. And one of the words for the enemy is Diablo, which means a splitter or a divider. And that's exactly what he did in the first relationship with Adam and Eve. He split them from each other. And all of a sudden, you've got Adam saying, God, it's the woman that you gave me. And he's blaming her for his own sin. And then God tells the woman, you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. That's one of the translations of that verse. And if that's the right translation of the verse, I guess that's a consequence of the fall, that we want to have some kind of ruling function over each other. We don't want anybody telling us what to do. And there's a prideful way of this, right? So I can feel like I'm better than you. And if I feel like I'm better than you, then we're going to have trouble in our relationship. But there's another way that it is less appearing. It doesn't appear prideful. And that is when I say, let me take care of everything for you. I don't have any boundaries with you, and I have no sense of being God's child. I am, in enmeshed with you, or I am codependent, and I don't really think about my own needs, but I think about yours. But really,
Right.
when you really get down to it, I'm thinking about my own needs, because I'm doing what I'm doing in relationship to you so I can get what I need out of this relationship. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing I would talk about, is that we live in a fallen world. Um, and, and then also, because of that, we have a past. So
Right.
people have done me wrong in the past, and I remember that. So sometimes I carry that around like baggage, and my body carries it. Sometimes I want to fight somebody because of something that they've said, but it's
Yeah.
because it reminds me of something that someone else said 5 years ago or 10 years
Oh,
ago.
right. Right.
And I might not even realize that in the meeting or talking with that person, but I might want to fight them, like with words. Or I
Yeah.
might want to take flight. I want to get out of there, because my
Hmm.
body's been in this kind of situation before, and in other situations I've run, and that served
Right.
me well. So I'm going to run again. And then there's also like the freeze response as well, where we just kind of don't know what to do, and we just stand there like an animal that's about to get pounced on. We just
Right.
that we can play dead, and the thing will go away. So I call those automatic responses. They're responses that are automatic. Um, our body, our emotions, our thoughts, and our images around all these things, I would say, need to be discipled. So my
Right.
body needs to be
Hmm.
discipled and needs to understand how it should react in these new situations. My emotions need to be discipled in these new situations, in these
Hmm.
relationships.
Right.
My thoughts and all the images that I have in my head. The scripture is pretty clear. It says that we're supposed to cast down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. So
Yeah.
I just jotted down some questions that I think can help us with that, because we want God's perspective about relationships, and particularly the situations that are occurring in our relationship. So now some of the questions I wrote down are: am I projecting the past into this current situation? So say
Right.
Joe and I, you
Hmm.
and I get into something, but and I get upset about it, but am I projecting something that happened in my past with a father or an uncle or some other male
Right.
figure in my life, and
Sure.
now I'm
Hmm.
projecting that on you?
Hmm.
Or how I might want to ask, how did this situation in the past, something that I'm really upset about from the past, how did God use that in my life? And so this is an important question, because if God's used that in my life, then he can redeem those things. And we don't need
Right.
to play on those scripts now in our relationships that we're in now. And
Hmm.
then also another question I'd ask is, where was God during this time? Where was God during that time in the past when I had this upset? Was he
Yeah.
there? What was he doing? What was he trying to say to me? How was he trying to comfort me? And sometimes
Right.
just realizing that God was with us, he didn't save us from the situation, but he brought us through it. And when we can realize that, that kind of lowers our distress, so that we're not bringing that into our current relationships.
Hmm.
And then the last thing I like to
Yeah.
ask about stuff in the past is, how does God want me to heal from this particular thing that happened in my past? How does he want to bring healing? So answering these
Yeah.
questions, I think, can help us start to deal with our past, so it doesn't flood into today's interactions.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. One of the things that struck me there, and I'm bringing this up because uh, it seems like, at least you might think it's obvious, but it's not really something that I thought about. But just thinking about those questions is, um, so much of growth and healing in these areas is through reflection. We're going to have to ask ourselves those kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know, even as a pastor, even though I've never done any extensive pastoral counseling, one thing I've talked to people who are seeing a counselor, and sometimes they're serious, but you kind of want to laugh, because they'll say, my counselor's giving me all this homework to do, and I kind of just laugh, because uh, I guess you would expect that if you're asking somebody for help, they're going to probably give you work to do. So it just goes to show that we're going to have to reflect on these things.
Yeah.
And another thing that struck me about what you said was, just on this upcoming Sunday, there's a quote. It's really famous. It's the first sentence in Calvin's Institutes,
Mm.
and what he says is that, essentially, the two most important things that we need to learn in life, if we want to be wise, is we need knowledge of God and we need knowledge of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're talking about. This is that aspect of truly understanding ourselves. Who are we? Who has God
Yeah.
made us to be? Which, of course, is going to require us to think. Um, the only thing I've thought that has been helpful to me in this, and you can chime in on this if you'd like, is, one counselor. I just like people to speak, straight into the point. And one of the things he told me was that, conflict is inevitable, and disappointment is inevitable. And that was helpful for me, because it showed me that, I probably have too high of expectations
Mm.
in life,
Right.
and of other people. And so that was really helpful for me to think about that, to just know that I need to deal. I need to expect it. I need to deal with what's in front of me, rather than blowing up in anger or frustration,
Okay.
because this is inconvenient. So in other words, I'm upset at the other person, because I'd rather not be dealing with this right now.
Right.
And so that's why I get angry and frustrated,
Yeah.
rather than just saying, well, this is the circumstance right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to deal with that. And so that's been helpful for me. And then one other thing, again, coming from a counselor, Paul Tripp said something that always stood out to me. And I'll just throw this out there in case there's anybody watching. And this is just helpful to reflect and see, is this what I'm doing right now? And Paul Tripp says in one of his books that what happens is that we tend to view people as either obstacles or vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those people in our lives that are vehicles, we really love and enjoy, because they give us what we want, and they never cause problems. They just sort of help us get what we want.
Sure.
But we get frustrated when somebody is an obstacle.
Yeah.
They're blocking what I really want to get in life. Which, of course, the self-examination that we need to do there is that, if I only love people who give me what I want, and I'm always angry and frustrated with people who are an obstacle to me, what it showed me about myself is that, man, I'm a pretty self-centered individual, and and so I need to repent and ask God to forgive me for that, because Jesus has told us that
Yeah.
to to lose our lives is to gain. And
Yeah.
so it kind of is that paradigm shift. So those are just things that have helped me, that, if someone were to ask me these questions, I'm just going to kind of regurgitate what I've heard, because I've,
Yeah.
I've found those things helpful. So yeah, so I mean, that's sort of, I guess we'll just throw this out there to people who are watching this, and and
Absolutely.
see what they think about it, and maybe see their comments, what they have. And I'll just end with this. If you're watching these videos, this 10 times we've done this, I think, something like that. If there's a question that you have for Pastor Vinny, if you just like to hear us discuss something, write that in the comments, and I'm sure we'd love to do that. And just as a way to end this and a segue into what we're planning to talk about next week is why do we all need to be in therapy? That's kind of going to be our question for next week. And I'll explain more about why we're talking about that, but just you can plan for that. We want to ask the question, why does everyone need to be in therapy? Or why could everyone benefit from seeing a counselor? So that's what we want to talk about next week. So until then, talk to you soon. See ya.
Can't wait.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. See ya.